Hello, listeners. Hi, my name is Madhavi, and I'm so happy to have you on UppTalk. You have come to the right place if you want to learn about IT and do really cool things with your hands. We are not just another IT company when I say UppTalk. Think of us as your learning partner dedicated to helping you reach your full potential. We have top notch hands on courses to help you build your business, whether you are new to technology or want to move up in your current job. Let's look around this as our first step towards learning.
Now we tried adding properties, you have the set properties, or directly tried adding it to the element value to this. What we did not try was editing the profile itself, in which the data is coming from the flat file. Let us go back, add the properties. We have added here. Now we need to call it here as well. And now for error message. Ship select this dynamic docking property. We just pass the name. We can simply say employee with ID to record rejected reason, something like this. We can make it look a little meaningful. Now we take our employee file. Previously for salary, we had set it up as number data type. When we were doing this, what happened? What was happening was whenever it was trying to read that profile and data in it, it expected this. When we were trying to read it for the first time itself, this employee ID for it, the problem was becoming it was expecting the salary to be numeric, not any special character, anything else. It would start throwing error immediately the first time it would access that data against the profile. The fix for this is we go back to our CSV file, flat file, we change it to character data type. Again, this would not impact salary, like comparison that greater than less than whatever we are doing. Now, it would allow us to have any kind of value here and not restrict us from performing actions on any of the other fields. Basically, now, if we run our test, let's see how it will come. Also, one important thing to remember. Usually we leave data type as character only majorly. Sorry, for almost all fields for this purpose only. We only modify the data type to specific number or date time. When we have received 100% confirmation, like not even once, this will be some other value in that field. Otherwise, the issue that we were seeing would happen. Now let's look at simply first our output, the error message. If you look at it now, we are getting it correctly. Employee with ID 01 record rejected. Reason the number of input is not valid, which is correct. Character at the rate is neither a decimal digit number, decimal point nor notation, which is correct output. I have a question. When we have changed the salary data type to character, why we are expecting the exceptional error for this? Why are we? When we have changed the data type of salary to character, why we are expecting the error message? Why are we expecting the error message? Yes, because we have changed the data type. We did change the data type that other fields for that record can be accessed. And not for handling that particular field, salary field, that we can take these fields and perform action on them. That is why we changed it to character. It will still throw the error for this, but it will allow us to capture it. Basically, that is the reason. Had we not changed it, I could not have captured any of this information and got the error formatted. Then the data team would not have understood this salary issue came for which ID basically. Now with this they know. How does performing comparison now? Comparison is still happening. Now comparison. Also, we need to move it to map shape. We cannot have it here basically. That is the next part which we will come to. Now, since we changed it to character, business rule would not allow us to do it directly because the expectation there changes. I was telling you that if we get 100% confirmation from our teams that this is always going to be a number value, then we can simply use this. Otherwise, we majorly keep all our transformations or these kind of checks inside the map shape only. That is about this. One question, how set property resolved the issue of yesterday? Like how set property is working here. How it is working here now, yes. Because now I changed the value of salary field, the data type, to character. It would allow numbers, special characters, daytime, everything. Which is, under its allowed set of values. It would not throw error. That is why this worked now. Had it been again rain, this data type would have been number. It accesses the whole record, basically your profile. Even if you try to read Zalran 1 or John or engineering software anything, it would also look at the salary field. Like if everything is matching the data type, the field and validations, mandatory check, all these checks get performed for that report, even if this is at position 1 and everything. We need to ensure all of them are in sync that way. Then it is able to read it properly. Did it make sense somewhere? Yes, it makes sense, but I want to know how set property is step up, like why we set it and how we implement it in the catch part. Custom error message. Why we set properties, you're saying. Set properties is nothing. You can simply assume it as you're setting up a variable or a value which you can later reuse in your process. Dynamic document property are the type of properties you set at document level. Essentially now, this whole thing is a single document. Once we perform the split here, each one of this becomes an individual document. Dynamic document property is basically it functions as performing action on that particular document itself. Basically, it allows you to take any field from that profile and like store the value of that field with each document. It will traverse through your whole process. Like if I take example of suppose Dalun to employee ID 2 and if an employee ID I'm storing like value 2, it will traverse through the whole path with ID 2. Again, I can, if I want, I can store some other value also. Essentially, the use case of this is for easy identification and customized message building. Or if I want to perform a check only if employee ID is equal to 2, this particular logic has to be passed or like check. If suppose some department, if employees belong to just certain like HR department be it or your cloud migration team. This is where you can control it using document properties. Did it make sense? Thank you. Basically, it is a variable which you set a document level and it tracks your value of variable with each document for it individually. Split will run every document one by one and every record one by one, and after splitting we are storing a variable. Yes, for each document. Basically, each document in the background, each document will have its own ID generated. What it will do is it will associate this variable and the field value to that each document ID and track it throughout. That's how the linking happens in background. Understood, Ritsi? Thank you. Now this is done. Moving to the next part of it. Let's remove this business tool and directly, perform some transformations. Let's open them up and let's play around again with this. See how everything behaves now. Let's remove this. Let's see what other numeric function we can try out. Let's leave this. Let's try out something as a lookup. We will first look at simple lookup. A simple lookup is basically, that we're against one kind of value. There is another reference, second value, which you can utilize. Suppose your system in your source application, it is some HR portal or something. They are using keyword as software developer. Whereas in your another payroll application, the designation is same, but they are having the keyword as consultant. Similarly, the position is senior software developer, but the name is senior consultant. For associate developer, it is just analyst. You have a scenario where your source sends you these kinds of names. Software developer, senior software developer, associate developer for the job title, but your target system, the payroll application, it does not use these names or maybe some other application. You need to set up a lookup in Boomi in your process to control this. Whenever any of this comes in, it would read the keyword there, switch the value to the one in the second column here and send it to the target. How we'll do this is we had manually set up the values here. We saved it and we do the mapping. Now let's just say yes. Let's see all scenarios. Let's see how it will behave and everything. Also, let's do that. We do not want to check, each one individually. Let's put up a map shape, combine it all into single dot message. How do we do that? We added a message step. We went to variables. There is this option of current data. Current data is whatever data is coming from the previous step. You call it using current data parameter. You store it in the variable and now it is called over in your message. This will combine everything now. Let's see how this will also work. Let's see how everything works. Did it get combined? It got combined. If you look at the in the first document, we pass software developer. Now the lookup has changed its value to consultant. The lookup happened here. If you look at your map shape, input came in as key software developer. The simple lookup started. It found the value against software developer as consultant. And then it mapped job title output to value consultant. That is how it was done. Similarly, for the next record, it found it as senior software developer. It performed the lookup, found value to be senior consultant. It mapped that value, senior consultant. Any questions about this lookup? Now we spoke about very simple lookup, which was just like key value pair. You look at the value received in key, you switched it to the value. Julius math. What happens when you have 5 columns of comparison and multiple lookups have to be done? In that case, we use CRT cross-reference tables. This kind of lookup is very widely used. Again, we'll build a better and bigger example later. For now, I will not deep dive without a bigger example. But the use case is again something similar. The idea behind it is where you want to, perform the lookup against 4 columns where you get value from one field. You reference it against the value in the second or third field. You perform these kinds of actions. Again, you can also perform lookup against a document cache. Say it, you build up a where you are. Well, I will do the example away only for catching one. Then another one is SQL lookup, where you connect to your database. You give your SQL query to execute. And in this, if you pass some inputs and what value you want to get extracted, you perform the SQL lookup directly against your database. That is the use case of SQL lookup. We usually avoid performing SQL lookup because this does a connection call. It will heavily impact the performance of your map shape. What we prefer is if we want to fetch some data for lookup, from this database or anything, rather than doing a connection call inside the map. We add a branch here. Simply call the database, store it in a document cache. That action is faster. And then do the document cache lookup. That will work much faster rather than doing the connection call and everything inside your map shape. How much of data can we store in document cache? There are size limitations. And previously, I remembered it's been a while. Let's just Google it. Let's say if the size is big enough that cannot fit in cache, does it do the lookup per document? Let's say the size of the document is too big to fit in a cache. In that case, does the SQL lookup per document basis or in a batch? It's a batch. How do we decide the batch size in that case? You remember we were discussing about connections. Connectors. If you look at some database, once you have set up your connection in your operation, you can control the batch count and everything like this to whatever database you're connecting. This batch size remains across all the operations that we do. Yes, across all database connectors that you use to connect to all of them will allow you to control the size of the batch and everything. If you see again, this has more customizable regular database operation max rows, max field size, batch count, fetch size, because this is like the essential crux of using this database operation. Again, there is no size limitation, but yes, there will be performance issues due to very high volume. High volume is not in thousands, it's like millions of records. Again, we will break that into parts and not fetch everything also from database. We will restrict it to our requirement. When we are building our SQL operation, we will try to ensure the data that we are fetching is based. We set up the filters such a way. It's ranging only for required for our integration execution. We do not want to, unnecessarily also fetch everything like just restricting it. If we know this is for a department lookup we are performing, the section or database gets refreshed like information gets added every 24 hours. We just want to restrict it to that 24 hours rather than receiving even previous information. We set up the filters, ensure that we only fetch limited information because even if I don't use that connector and everything here and do a connection call, it will be difficult for it to keep the connection alive for that much longer duration. Fetch the information. Do a lookup. It will again be a tedious task either ways. We try to contain our narrow, our search to the maximum one possible. Did that make sense? When you're working with integrations, initially, yes, as like entry. When you are just entering as developers, it might be limited for you. You just be asked to basically do the mapping or write basic logics and everything. But slowly, once you get advanced with integrations and in your job role with it, you will have to factor in everything about your connections, the amount of data that you're retrieving, how you are retrieving. Every little single detail would come into play that you will have to take care of and like think before building your logics and all. Let's play around with it further and see. Let's add another field. Name it as MMD, which is basically your last modified date. Your source system does not send it, but your target system wants this value that once you're updating the application, it would know when it received the data. You can either you'll have to use your date function's date format. It would work where you have your input date string. But since you're not receiving it from source system, what we will do is we will get the current date, map it to last modified date and data type. We can change it to date time. And we can tweak the format here. We will look at it, what value came and what happened. Let's run our test. System movement. Now let's look at our map. We had set up this function get current date. We got the current date in this format, which is your 24, month is 11th and date is 13th. and the timestamp of our item. This was generated like this and it mapped to the MMD. If I now, since we performed this action of, restricting it on the XML, the data type, we change it to date and we modified the format. Now it shows us correctly like this. Tumfen. We can restrict this kind of actions or perform this kind of date conversions as well. Let's play around with this data a little further. Another column of location. We can call it as Delhi. We can call it as new. We can call it as Munich. We can call it as Moscow. Now let's modify this. We added a new field. Let's add that also to the list. Location. Now your requirement is to, if you look at the data, it has all these big names, engineering, sales. Let's call it a marketing. HR instead of HR, let's say human resource, customer support, all this big names it has. And again, locations, it has all this. But your target system has a requirement where they do not want to use all these big names and everything. They have their own referencing with some another database application. They want to restrict all this, to just this require some short codes for all of this. How do we achieve that? We take this. Now we cannot use this simple lookup anymore because we have to perform this on department, location, job title, all three of them. We delete this. Now let's see if we can go around using cross-reference lookup where we perform this action. Let's see if we are able to do this. There are now two options for us. Before we begin on this, since I know I just need to perform the lookup on three of these fields and I have a set of values, I can still go for a simple lookup by adding it for individual one. Or if I'm similarly like other tools, I can add lookups. It would be much simpler. Else, I can add my cross-reference lookup where I can reference out one value linking it to another one. And if it's a nested referencing that I need to perform, in our case of this requirement, we'll have to go with simple lookup. Because if you look at it, department and job title can be linked. But location is not associated to department or job title if you look at it like in a general sense. You need to have set up a simple lookup on this location. But on your department and job title, we can build a common reference table rather than having two simple lookups. First, let's start with this location lookup. If it's Delhi, we can just say it is Delhi. Mumbai will just say Mum. We'll say UL. We'll say Pilar. We'll just say P code. We will map this. We do not have this field, let's add it. If this is the Empress location, take a break and come back. Because once I start on this cross reference part of it, it will take like 15-20 minutes. We were discussing if we have some kind of linked lookup that we need to perform and change the values to some shortcodes or something. acceptable by target systems. We do that using cross-reference lookup. We go to lookup. We click on cross-reference lookup. We create a CRT, short term for cross-reference table. We will say CRT. We will say department, job. Let's change this. Update table. Definition is how many columns we want, how much data we have. We can update it using this update table definition. For now, let's keep it simple to 4. First one would be actual department that we are receiving. Actual job code that we are receiving. We will say short department code. Let's say department code. And we will say, let's call it, I think, job title. Let's call it job code. You can control these names like this. Let's add a row. Let's take this department of engineering. Let's add it here. Let's take this, add it in. Department code for engineering, we will keep it as eng. Job code, let's make it SD. Software developer. Let's add another one. Again same, it will be engineering, but we also have senior software developer position in it. Let's again same engineering. As D2, now again this table, it can be built manually like this, or we can perform an import from CS3. If we have built all this in Excel during our workshop with both business application team source and the target teams, we can import it also as it is. Otherwise, if it's a small one, we import it because we received the real-time data and it's like a lot of information. But for our testing, we are building it manually, learning that way. Marketing position is called sales executive. We call it NKT sales executive one. We'll say. HR, let's not call it developer. Let's call him analyst. Part 1 would be human resource. We call it R. We will call it Charlie. For now, let's keep it short that we get the idea rather than going with too big of a thing. Now this is done. Let's come back to our map. Lookup. Lookup references is the field against which you want to perform the lookup. You can either have one field. When you're performing the lookup, it will only perform against department and map both the values. In the output, you can have both department code and job code. But we want again the stock code job title as well. We do not want every one of this particular department have same. We need to define it out clearly. Combination of department and job title needs to be searched up in this table and relevant department code and job code needs to be passed further. We select it this way. We click on. We bring it here. We bring the mapping here. The department code, we bring it here. Job code, we bring it here. We save it. We save it. We click on Run Test and let's see how this mapping works. Just a change. Just a second. State be updated, 1 here. Now let's run our test and see how it is behaving. Let's look at the first one. If you see, the first one department was engineering and title was software developer. As per our CRT, it checked the department engineering, mapped it to ENG, and for software developer, it mapped it to SD1. Similarly, if you look at pick up another random HR1, department change to HR, job title change to HR. Now let us look up at the action that happens here. It started with this basic lookup, department engineering job title software developer. Lookup happens, cross-reference lookup started department coded, found valid one was engineering. And similarly job code was SD1. It mapped these two values here. And the action happened. The map ship got executed for it. Similarly for next one, something similar happened. This is how it works. Any questions on this? Just try to fetch the value you know of any of these fields, user try, catch, and decision shape. Build this custom error message, this kind of thing, something like this. And also practice this lookups, either simple lookup and cross-reference lookup, both. And we will discuss it tomorrow. I want each one of you to do it. And then tomorrow in the session, we will verify it for everyone. Ensure you have practiced it out. Now, Rishi, one question. Can we implement multiple functions for a data type? Like for this case scenario, if I want the updated department code and job code concatenated and stored in the XML. Can we do that? You can do that. For that, you use user-defined functions. You simply go to New Function. You say you're performing it on department job code. Your input would be department and clear job title. It would be department code. It would be job code. Instead of having your CRT outside, you bring your CRT here, cross-reference lookup table. You can add it here. And your output department code, your output job code. This is one function. Now to your requirement, you can perform string concatenation. You go to add a function. It's a string function that you perform. You do it like this. Delimiter this. Input name would be your depth code. Another input that you want to concatenate is your job code. Add it like this. Click. You can map it like this. Also, you can map it like this. Now come back to your. Here, you can remove this from here. You map the department, job title, department, and your job code. You come back here, you run tests. Let's see if it works. Let's see if it works. Let's see if we got it to work. It worked this way. Engineering. Using this user-defined functions, you can perform like countless number of logical transformations. On one or two fields, or like 3, 4 fields like which are interlinked. You can add like multiple steps here, multiple inputs, multiple outputs, and perform your nested functions. Then there is also another important thing. If you have like 4 or 5 functions in it, say this is another one. Let me just copy paste. You can also control the order by controlling their position. If you look at it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Even if your cross-reference table has the mapping, it would not get executed directly here. It will first run second also, third also. Then it will come to this. When you are building complex logics, you want your logics happening in a sequence, Like you want some value to be fetched before the another part of the nested function happens or something like that. You can control that as well. Did it make sense? If we don't give input to the second one, why it ran, it won't execute it now. I am just saying like once you have mappings for everything, basically, it will work as a sequence. You will have to place them in order correctly. If I just wanted to execute in parallel, then what should I do? No, it does not allow for that. I will have to create a separate function, a separate UDF function for it. But you will not have a use case where you have to do it in parallel because it will be running only on a single document and the building up of logics works in a way in a sequential manner only always. You cannot very rare chance where you have something you want to perform in parallel any action. It always goes in a sequence of kind of data. You are coming from a parent level, you come to a child level, then subchild like subset of subset. That way it's always sequential only. Practice all this. Now UDF has user-defined functions also. Practice all this out. We have a lot of stuff. If you can build, understand, and build basic of this like this, then you will build up your initial basic core about the data transformations. Because in real time, in your map shapes and everything, you will be widely using this like where you will have like 10, 15 steps happening in this user-defined functions and nested cross-reference tables. All of this will be like lot in picture in play. Practice all this out and tomorrow we will check if we can use nested user-defined function as well. I have no more questions. Thank you. Please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel. For more information, contact us sales@therightuptalk.com.